Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the invocation. Then please remain standing for the Philippine National Anthem. Lord Almighty, we come before you with grateful hearts, acknowledging the blessings already entrusted to us. Grant us wisdom to use our resources responsibly, generosity to share with those in need, and courage to build systems that uplift the many, not just the few. May our work bring dignity, our trade bring fairness, and our communities flourish in harmony. Bless our leaders with vision, our families with resilience, and our nation with unity, so that prosperity may not be hoarded, but shared across generations. We ask this with hope and faith, that together we may walk the path of justice and celebrate the joy of shared abundance. Amen. You may now be seated. And now, please welcome our MC, the chair of the MAP Shared Prosperity Committee and a professor at the Department of Management and Organization of the Ramon V. Del Rosario College of Business of De La Salle University. Please welcome Dr. Benito Ben L. T. Hankey.
A pleasant good afternoon to everyone. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the third MAP Summit on Shared Prosperity. Time has moved so fast. This is already the third. Before we start the program, please allow me to thank our sponsors, especially PLDT and SMART, for co-presenting this third MAP Summit on Shared Prosperity. And may I also acknowledge all the other partners for this summit. May I just ask our prosper without support from the private sector? May I also acknowledge our other partners for this summit? Our gold sponsor, BPI. Please rise. We rehearsed this earlier. Mukhang all ladies ang BPI. Yan mo, ha? Sa bagay, maski PLDT, no? And then, of course, from our silver sponsors, DMCI Holdings, Inc. Our friends from DMCI, are they here? Oh, they're on that side of the table. I just met Chill earlier. And then, of course, from PWC, Isla Lipana and Company, where our friends from Isla Lipana, there you are. Let's give them our appreciation. And then I saw Lizanne earlier, SM Investments Corporation and BDO from the... Okay, thank you, Lizanne, for supporting our activity. And SM Supermalls. Our friends from SM Supermalls, are they represented? Okay, I'm sure they're there. Thanks to all of our sponsors. Again, a round of applause for everyone who made this activity possible. All right. Let us hear a message of appreciation on behalf of PLDT and SMART as our co-presenter of today's third MAP Summit on Shared Prosperity. Let us welcome the Vice President and Head for Public Sector of the PLDT Enterprise, my new friend, Ms. Ruby Montoya. Let's all welcome Ruby.
Good afternoon and a warm welcome to everyone joining us today. On behalf of PLDT Enterprise and our broader PLDT and Smart organization, it is our honor to be part of the third MAP Summit on Shared Prosperity, alongside the Management Association of the Philippines and our distinguished group of leaders from business, government, and civil society. Today's theme of shared prosperity is both timely and essential. As our nation continues to navigate rapid digital transformation, we are presented with a very clear opportunity not only to grow our economy, but to ensure that progress is more inclusive, equitable, and sustainable across communities. Achieving this requires more than innovation. It requires collaborations amongst different sectors. We are seeing how strong partnership can translate intent into impact. From improving access to essential services to strengthening local economies to enabling more responsive governance. From our perspective at PLDT Enterprise, our work with the public sector has always been anchored on enabling these outcomes. We do so through unified ecosystem, bringing together, of course, PLDT's fixed network, our smart wireless capabilities, ePLDT's cloud and cybersecurity expertise, and our Vitros data center infrastructure, our PLDT Global, and innovative platforms from our sister company, Multisys. Through this one PLDT enterprise approach, we are able to support institutions more holistically. We deliver services not only more efficient and secure, but also more responsive to the needs of citizens and communities. From smarter cities, digital government platforms, or even expanded access to critical services. However, we know for a fact that technology alone is not the answer. What drives shared responsibility is how we align across sectors to deliver solutions that are grounded in real-world needs and create meaningful impact. This is why gathering like this today, as PLDT has always been a supporter, are very important. They bring together diverse perspectives to move from dialogue to action. As we look ahead, there's a clear opportunity before us to build a future where growth is not only sustained but shared. A future where progress reaches more Filipinos and where no sector is left behind. PLDT Enterprise and the broader PLDT and Smart Group remains committed to working alongside with all of you in enabling a more connected, inclusive, and resilient Philippines. Thank you very much, and God bless us all. Good afternoon.
Thank you, Ruby, for that very apropos message. I'm sure we can all agree that shared prosperity would be impossible without the information technology infrastructure that PLDT and other companies provide. At this stage, I would like to call on our dynamic and visionary president of the Management Association of the Philippines. Let's all welcome the president and COO of Vito CME Holdings Corporation, Dr. Donald Lim.
Good afternoon to our distinguished speakers, panelists, moderators, fellow MAP members, partners, and friends. On behalf of the 1,300 members and the Board of Governors of the MAP, welcome to the third MAP Summit on Shared Prosperity. Let me begin by thanking our partners, PLDT and Smart, BPI, DMCI Holdings, SM Investments, SM BDO, and SM Supermalls, and of course our MAP committees led by Ben Tihanki and JJ Moreno for bringing this important conversation together. I've been a member of I've been a member of MAP for so many years, no? And this is the third. I'll be honest, I haven't attended the first two because I did not understand what it is for, right? And when we were going through the program and was slowly being explained, okay pala. And overnight, I became a believer of the principle of shared prosperity. And that is why let me start by asking a question. Are we truly achieving shared prosperity now, or are we simply growing the economy while inequality quietly deepens? Because the truth is, if you ask some of the businessmen or some of our leaders in government, they would say, yeah, the Philippines has posted growth. Philippines businesses have expanded, opportunities have increased. But we must also ask, because that's important, yes, but we must also ask the other side. Who is being left behind? Are the benefits of growth reaching the farmer, the daily wage earner, the small entrepreneur struggling with rising costs? Or are we as leaders unintentionally building an economy that works well for some but not for many? That brings me to a more fundamental question. What is real shared prosperity? Is it higher GDP, stronger corporate earnings, more investments, or something deeper? I would argue that real shared prosperity is not measured by how much wealth we create, but by how widely that wealth is felt. It must be inclusive, it should reach the poorest of the poor, it creates dignity, not just income, and it must create opportunity, not just growth. Because if growth does not uplift the majority, then we must ask ourselves, what exactly are we growing? At MAP, we have long advocated for steward leadership. Leadership that goes beyond quarterly results, leadership that considers long-term national impact, leadership that understands that business success and societal progress are not separate conversations. They are the same conversations. But today, I want to go one step further. It is no longer enough to believe in shared prosperity. We must now act on it deliberately, structurally, and measurably. Let me challenge everyone in this room, especially our CEOs and business leaders. I know we're trying to survive because times are really tough, right? For business, for ourselves and everything, right? But that's why I want to challenge us and ask, a deeper question. Are we really still doing enough? Or do we want to do enough? Are we designing our organizations, given the current constraints, to uplift more people? Or do we just want to optimize profits because it's shrinking? Are we creating ecosystems or just enterprise? Are we empowering communities or simply operating within them? Because shared prosperity will not happen by intention alone. It requires decisions, hard decisions, to invest in people when our margins are tight, to build inclusive supply chains, not just efficient ones, to support small partners, not just large ones, and to prioritize long-term value over short-term gain. Since 2020, MAP's Covenant for Shared Prosperity has outlined our commitments to 6 key stakeholders: employees, customers, suppliers, communities, the environment, and shareholders. But today, I ask, have we truly embedded these principles into how we run our business? Or have they remained aspirations on paper? Because the world we are entering is demanding more. We are facing rising inequality, economic uncertainty, and social pressures that will not wait. And if we business leaders do not step up, others will, and the solutions imposed may not be the ones we want. That is why this summit matters, not as a discussion, but as a call to action. And that is also why we emphasize the theme of MAP, Leadership in Action, right? Lifting the nation. We will exchange ideas, we will share perspectives, but I hope we do more than that. I hope we leave this room asking ourselves, what will I change in my organization starting tomorrow? How will my company contribute to real inclusive growth? And what legacy will we leave, not just as executives, but as nation builders? In fact, the challenge I want to throw later on, earlier I was in the MAP GMM. I was telling people Holy Week last week, I was in Puerto Princesa, I was Palawan, then I went to the underground river. It's the 7 wonders. no one's there. There's no line. And the boatman that brought, you have to ride a boat, right? A pump boat. We're dead by next month because gas is high and there's no tourism and they're all trying to sell their wares already because wala na eh. Diba? So how we really reach them? If you talk to, and because I'm an Air Force reservist, so I do a lot of civil military operations across many communities. And when you go to the barangays, we identify who are the poorest of the poor. And when you talk to them, they would already sort of saying, iniwan na tayo ng gobyerno. Ganun ang mindset pare-pareho. That's why there's the NTF-LCAC, that's why there are the Reds coming in. Because they said, if the government will not take care of you, then dito na lang kayo. Let's go up against the government. And that is why it's so important for us that there's no society that is really successful if it's not inclusive. You cannot have an A, B, and an upper class. No? And in fact, when I was starting my, and I speak from the heart kasi, in my marketing career, we have what we call A, B, C1, C2, di ba? DE, different social classes. When I graduated in 1998, when we were doing my marketing profession, may tinatawag na broad C, right? The broad middle class. That was around 35% of the Philippine population. Now, we're doing planning, di ba? We call it broad C, pero it's such a fake term because the C, the middle class, is 10%. The poverty and the below poverty, DE, the class DE, is now 80+%. Diba? And we've gone to so many ASEAN talks. Sorry na lang, iniwan na tayo ng Vietnam. Diba? And may iwan pa tayo ng marami if we do not, wala eh. Whether you want to rely on the government, if we don't want to rely, we have to do whatever we can. No? And so that's the challenge I leave to all of you. That I know we will sign a lot of things, we will agree, we will learn from one another, but I hope we need to progress and put that into action. I also hope that in the fourth, maybe to be really inclusive, I respect and I really I'm looking forward to all the discussions by our esteemed speakers. But in the next Shared Prosperity Forum, maybe, next year na, hindi na ako president, but maybe we can invite a farmer, a jeepney driver, and the people who, and really get their thoughts on how they are really affected. Because for us, with all of this economic crunch happening, with all of the geopolitical challenges, we might get to say, okay, maybe we cannot travel anymore. But to a lot, not only to some, a lot of families, it's going to be a meal for their dinner that they will not eat because they just have nothing. So again, let me wrap up before I over talk. Because in the end, shared prosperity, right, is not a slogan. It is a responsibility. And leadership in today's world is no longer defined by how successful our companies, which is our measure, diba? We have to be successful. But what is more important is on how many lives we can improve along the way. So I wish everyone a productive afternoon. Thank you.
Many thanks, President Donald. I especially like the way he explained it. Do not just believe CSP, act on it. What I like about these graduates of the 90s, Donald Lim and Vince Dizon, whom we just heard, they are really into action, practical impact. Vince Dizon was my student, by the way. When I was Dean of Student Affairs at De La Salle, he was the president of the Student Council. And I already saw the future, that this is a young man who wants to make a difference in his country through action. And we see the same intent in our President Donald Lim. It is now my pleasure to introduce our first keynote speaker. Of course, following MAP policy, we will dispense with his kilometric qualifications, which you can see by just going through the QR code. But I cannot give the floor to him without giving a personal note. I remember when I was a young consultant in the late 80s, one of my first engagements was with Development Bank of the Philippines, where our keynote speaker served as president. And I was deeply touched, and I think you ruined me for life, sir, because he was emphasizing Filipino values at DBP. And those of you who may be old enough to remember, they had excellent values videos from DBP. You can even see this in YouTube now. I show this to my students and they all comment on the hairstyle, right? But I tell them to focus on the values. So he stands for what is the best in our vision for our country, and he has been steadfast in promoting not only financial growth, but an inclusive economy for our country. So everyone, please join me in welcoming our opening keynote speaker, the Chair Emeritus of the Institute of Corporate Directors and the MAP Management Person of the Year for 2009. Let us all welcome Dr. Jesus Jess Estanislao. Dr. Jess.
Thank you, Professor, Dean Tihanki. Your program calls for me to give a keynote speech. Given the enormity of the problems we face as a country, as a people, I've decided to issue a call instead. It's a call coming from one ordinary Filipino, one of more than 110 million of us, who despite my advanced age, still hopes and believes that our country can rise again. However, I must say at the outset that the times we face are very hard. And so we are all entitled to ask, is there still hope in our country? The answer that I give is simple and straightforward. And that's the only reason why I stand before you this afternoon. Yes, we can have hope for the country which is for us to build. We see the corruption, we see the injustice, and we feel the anger of our people. And perhaps inside us, is there really hope? And as I've indicated already, there can be hope, provided that we start from this basic proposition, that hope will not come from above us. It will not come from the top. It will have to come from each one of us. And Donald, I'll take your challenge from the 1,300 members of the Management Association of the Philippines. From where we are, from what we do, and from how we live our lives and carry out our work as we go to our respective offices and factories. Because the truth is this: the crisis we face today as a people is not a crisis of systems. It is a crisis of governance. And ultimately, therefore, it is a crisis of values. And that is why the solution we have to throw to our national corruption crisis must go deeper. Because the ultimate antidote to corruption is good governance. Not slogans, not anger alone, not more letters to the president, not more marches at EDSA, but it is good governance. Through core values that are actually lived, practiced, and sustained every day in every facet of our lives as Filipinos. And this is the important point. Governance is not only for government alone. It is for all of us. It is therefore for every institution, in business, in government, and in civil society. Because it is in our institutions where decisions are made every day. It is in our workplaces where integrity is tested. It is in our ordinary duties where character is formed. And that is why the call is directed to institutions. Because institutions do matter. They shape people. They influence behavior. They define what is right. And if institutions change, the nation can change. So let us be very clear. We can no longer wait. The problems we face are enormous, and there do not seem to be easy ways out of those problems. But for too long we have looked upward and waiting for leaders, waiting for reforms, waiting for change to come from the top. But today we must face a difficult truth. And that is, we cannot depend on the top leadership alone. I'm sorry to say, we cannot depend on the President of the Philippines alone. We cannot depend on Congress alone. We cannot depend on our court system alone. We cannot depend on elections alone. Today, that responsibility shifts away from waiting for action coming from the top. That responsibility shifts to each one of us, to our institutions, to ordinary Filipinos who are willing to do something. Not tomorrow, not in 2028, but today. And so we begin. We begin the national transformation of our country right here in the Management Association of the Philippines. Are we willing to take the first step? And that step is simple but powerful. Every institution must choose its core values. Not many, but perhaps few. Clear enough to remember and strong enough to guide decisions. And these values must align with who we are supposed to be as a people. Our laws mandate that we must be all, magka-Diyos, magka-tao, magkakalikasan, magkabansa. Are the institutional core values we have chosen for our respective institutions fully supportive of these? It's maybe about time that we shift away from thinking of our respective institutions and relate to our duties and responsibilities as Filipinos, as builders of this country. So the core values that we choose for our respective institutions must be fully supportive of these four. Magka-Diyos, magtao, magkakalikasan, magkabansa. Are these values aligned what we're supposed to be? These are not just words we recite. They must become the way we live, the way we are. In meetings, in decisions, in how we treat one another. Because when values are lived and not just spoken, everything begins to change. And that leads us to the second step. That is, we have to be very clear about the core purpose for which our institutions exist. So the second step involves asking, what is the core mission that our institution is supposed to be pursuing? What is supposed to be the big positive difference we can make, not only in our environment, not only in our business community, but above all, in the country we serve. Institutions are not there just to earn, just to grow. They are there. We're all there to serve our people, to serve our society, and to serve the Filipino nation. Because an institution without a purpose becomes self-serving. We become so self-absorbed. But an institution with a purpose becomes a force for good. And this is probably a thought we have neglected for too long by so many of us, that we are not there for ourselves, not there only for profit, for our personal glorification, but all of us are here serving institutions to be able to build the country. And that leads us to the third step. Given that clear purpose, what is the specific niche that our institutions are carving to make a great deal of positive difference for the Filipino people and the Filipino nation? Institutions must find their role in nation building. Maybe not big at the start, maybe not perfect, but real, concrete, sincere, and I would say generous for the Filipino, especially for the Filipinos who have been left behind, struggling below the poverty line, and struggling with their existence to put body and soul and children together. Because the nation is not built by grand plans alone. It is built by many institutions doing their part, faithfully, consistently, quietly. And because of these three, institutions can promote change that is real and genuine. What are these three? Again, to be very specific, core values that are in support of our four core national values. We cannot run away from those four because we have a country to build. Second, we have to have a very clear mission of the positive difference we must make in nation building. And third, what is the positive, specific contribution we can make to make a difference for the Philippines and the Filipino people? If all 1,300 members of MAP would take these first three critical steps, then hope can begin to return to this country. But we should not stop there. Based on my experience, there are three additional things that we have to worry about. The first one is we have to form our people. We form them, we guide them, we have them become not just skilled, but good. Because behind every system is a person, and behind every decision is a conscience. And when people are formed well, institutions become strong. And with strong, good, well-formed people, we can begin to improve our operations and internal processes. We remove waste. We clean up systems. We make things work efficiently, honestly, and transparently. No shortcuts, no under-the-table deals, no excuses. But are these mere words that we say in speeches? Do we actually bring them down into the day-to-day operations of our respective corporations and institutions? Internal processes, are they as good as those that we see in economies around us? Are they as efficient and effective and customer caring and stakeholder serving, as our textbooks tell us to make them so. Because a clean system is a powerful weapon against corruption. And if we are more corruption-free, we give each one of us an opportunity to grow much stronger, much faster, in a manner that is much more inclusive. A growth not only for ourselves, we grow so we can create jobs, so we can lift others, so we can reduce poverty, and we can therefore give dignity to more Filipino families. And that is what it means to be truly makabansa, makabayan, which is one of our 4 core national values. Are we doing all these 3? Forming our people not only to be skilled, but to be good. Raising the standards of our productivity, efficiency, and internal value systems so that they are as good as anything can get. And finally, are we earning the financial trust and confidence of the customers and stakeholders we serve so that we're able to grow much faster? And we grow much faster because we want to be able to add more value to our economy, to give purchasing to our people, to raise the standards of savings that we should have in this economy, and therefore to get the economy growing and developing for all in an inclusive manner. I mentioned 6 steps: core values, core purpose, the niche from which we serve the country, forming people, raising the standards of our productivity, and earning the trust and confidence of our customers and stakeholders, so we are given more power to grow and to grow much faster. Is that enough? In many ways, yes. But the process and the journey of national transformation is not a solo journey. We cannot do it alone. And this is probably one of the reasons why we are being left behind. We're thinking too much of ourselves, of our respective operations. And we're thinking less of the solidarity bonds that we can forge with one another, so we can travel together towards shared prosperity as good stewards, not only of our respective institutions, but of our nation. And that means, therefore, through MAP, can we build platforms by which we can learn from one another? Not only how we form people, but also how we can start offices for strategy management that will drive our institutions forward. Can we put together a multi-sector governance council to seek support, understanding, and encouragement from all the stakeholders that we serve? And are we serious about the ESG that we've been proclaiming to the rest of the world? Philippine business, Philippine industry is serious about. Can we therefore arrange for an honest-to-goodness accreditation system, perhaps through MAP, so that in effect the ESG initiatives that we have are not only creative, impactful, with a lot of socio-economic difference that we can make for the Philippines, the Filipino nation, Philippine society, and the Philippine economy. When do we begin? Not in 2028. We have to begin now. Between today and 2030, we have a great window of opportunity, a great chance, a very serious responsibility to begin something real, to really change this country, not by depending on the politicians that we elect, but by the actions we actually live in accordance with the core values consistent with makadiyos, makatao, magkakalikasan, and makabansa. Then change becomes possible. Not from the top alone, but from the ground up. So I ask you, if not we, members of the Management Association of the Philippines, who? If not now, when can we begin changing this country? Because at the end of the day, the future of our country will not be decided only in halls of power, not only in Malacanang, not only in the halls of Congress, nor in the courts of justice, nor in our electoral system alone. It will be decided mainly in our offices, in our hospitals, in our schools, in our businesses, and in our local communities. I was very privileged last week to receive a copy of a souvenir book issued to honor the governance work of Mayor Jerry Treñas of Iloilo. I've been so privileged to work with him. Mayor Treñas, together with his colleagues, including Senator Drilon and many others, have changed Iloilo dramatically and have shown the way through citizen participation and good principles of good governance adopted by the city of Iloilo. And these past 5 years or 6 years, I've been so privileged to see the heroic efforts of our public hospitals, not only to take care of the COVID patients, but to build themselves up, to become examples of public service-oriented hospitals in the public sector, not only in the Philippines, but in the entire Southeast Asian region. And they're proving that it can be done right here in the Philippines by institutions taking up the cudgels for their institutional transformation, but also for our national transformation as well. So, ordinary Filipinos, we have to do what is right every single day. And if enough of us, starting with the 1,300 members of MAP, if enough institutions rise to this call, if MAP takes up the cudgels for this call for national transformation, then corruption will begin to lose its hold. Trust will begin to come in and return. And hope will begin to rise again. And one day, we'll look back and say, this is the moment we have chosen to act. This is the moment we have stopped waiting. This is the moment we began to rebuild in solidarity. Finally, for our country, for our people, for the Philippines we all love. Thank you and have a great afternoon.
Thank you, Dr. Jess, for inspiring us once again. So we are challenged by Dr. Jess to emphasize that change can only come from inside out through our values. And he touches on a very important idea of nation building. We can only build a nation if all citizens cooperate and collaborate. And our dependence on higher leadership needs to be complemented by our own actions at the level of each person. Moving on to our next keynote speaker, one of the marching orders I got from President Donald Lim was to bring in an ASEAN flavor to our summit. And I was fortunate to find out, and I don't know how many of you in the audience know this, Malaysia adopted a shared prosperity agenda in its government in 2019. So 1 year ahead of when we adopted it. So I'm very curious what's going on there. So we invited a professor from Sunway Business School, and he specializes in corporate shared responsibility. And so I will bring in our speaker now, and we're going to do this by Zoom. So as usual, when we use Zoom, let us all pray that it works, right? So let us all welcome our next speaker, a lecturer and program leader of the Bachelor of Science Honors Program in International Business of the Department of Management of Sunway Business School. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Muhammad Imtiaz Hossein. Are you praying? Hello, Muhammad. You have the floor.
Thank you so much. I believe I'm audible.
Yes, you are.
So let me share my screen. The slides are visible, Prof?
They are visible, but please go to presentation mode. You are already. You may proceed.
Yeah, already. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, distinguished professors and then panelists and moderators. It's my great pleasure to join virtually with you. And then thank you, Prof. Ben, for inviting me in the third MAP Summit on Shared Prosperity. So this is Dr. Muhammad Imtiaz. I'm a lecturer and program leader, international business, and chair of early career researcher at Sunway Business School of Malaysia. So I begin with my presentation with the little bit contextual settings, what is going on Malaysia, and then the ASEAN perspective on sustainable development agenda. So Malaysia's, you see the current, the GDP is 422 billion in 2024, which is growing well, 5.1% annually. And I purposefully chosen the manufacturing companies because of the tangibility into the corporate shared prosperity and then the sustainable impacts. So manufacturing companies, basically they are contributing 23% in Malaysian GDP. Although in Malaysia, there have significant contribution from hospitality and then the service industry. Malaysian country, they are confront the sustainability challenges across the economic, social, environmental dimensions. As we all know that the triple bottom line, the people's, planet, and profit, but we also talking and added the 4P, which is the prosperity from few years. So if we overlook the Sustainable Development Report, we can see that Malaysia is currently 84 globally, which is the moderate SDG performance ensured, and then Philippines on 87th. Thailand, they are leading actually in the 43, and then Vietnam improving a lot, and also the 61%. So this is the data-based insights, and then if we see the manufacturing companies, mostly there is the evidence that the manufacturing companies, they are high risk and vulnerable onto the sustainable performance. Most of the accidents, we can see the 3,961 accidents happen in the manufacturing company. So there are room for improvement a lot. And then in terms of investment, our Malaysian government, they are focusing on most of the investment economy, EV and semiconductor industry. So those are the prioritized industry and sectors in upcoming years. So basically the shared prosperity concept, yes, Prof. Ben already mentioned that we have the agenda, national agenda. So Malaysia basically, this shared prosperity vision 2030 was incorporated from the Malaysian 12th plan, which is 2021 to 2025. This 12th plan was the focus on inclusive, the green growth, attaining sustainability and resilience, and the shared prosperity is an anchor to achieve these national agendas. So what is the shared prosperity? In terms of the Malaysian context, the promotion of growth in the average income and consumption expenditure of the bottom 40% of the population in our country. So there are three key pillars, which is the inclusive growth, equitable wealth distribution, and sustainable transformation. So this is the framework of the Malaysian shared prosperity vision. They are guided by the 15 principles. It's also available in the online as a PDF form, so we can go in. And then the 8 enablers, which is the fiscal sustainability, the financial capital, effective institutional delivery, governance and integrity, education activity, big data, sustainability, and enlightened society. So now, since last year, we already completed our 12 Malaysian plan, so we are moving ahead in the 13 Malaysian plan, 2026 to 2030. Our strategic direction mostly focus on high-value industries, since the complexity is increasing, advanced manufacturing, smart technology, Industry 4.0 and Industry 5.0, regional development, Sabah and Sarawak, we are planning to move into our energy hub into Sabah and Sarawak, which is quite remote from the East Malaysia, and cost of living support, infrastructure, education, and food and security is our main target. But although our last agenda and plan was completed, but we aligned and moved forward this shared prosperity with this current 13 Malaysian plan. So during my PhD, which was completed back in 2024, I came to this shared prosperity concept and then policy. Then I decided, and then it was funded by the government, Malaysian government, Higher of Education. So it was a challenge for me to develop a skill, and I will share with you that why I basically decided to come up with a skill development. Okay, so basically when I gone through the literatures and then as a researcher, yes, I always have to review the literatures and then the existing contents. So the contents were quite fragmented, and there are existing studies mostly focused on the national context, and there are no validated skills was available so that we can conduct the research and quantitatively, and then policy relevancy also was not much constant there. So I thoroughly review the literatures by using the PRISMA framework, which is a guided framework to gone through by the literature, and then by using the keywords. In total, 32.9 thousands of literature was available, but 37 articles and then white papers, working papers, World Bank reports are mostly relevant into the corporate shared prosperity. So basically, this was one of the prominent researchers, Prof. Narayan from Australia. He developed this model, which is the shared prosperity concept. It focused on poverty reduction, opportunity for all, taxes, transfers, growth, and job creation. But there are also limitations that this is not comprehensive and covered all the aspects of the shared prosperity. I followed a skill development procedures to ensure that these skills was validated and then maintain the rigorosity. After doing the literature review, we identified the 5 dimensions of corporate shared prosperity. And I developed a model, this is the model embedded with the stakeholders development, equity and non-discrimination, organizational sustainability, stability, social well-being, infrastructure development. So these are the 5 key dimensions, and there are 16 items or sub-dimensions, constructs was embedded within this corporate shared prosperity scales. And then after developing this scale, we are implemented into the context, like Malaysian manufacturing companies. Mostly we choose an ISO 14001 certified manufacturing firms. The list was available there, and then we did the pilot test. We also did the in-depth interview, 229 responses, quantitative responses we collected, and then interview was conducted. And this was the overall respondents, 190 managers and 39 CEOs was participated in this study, and 115 companies also participated in this study. So 229 respondents are there, 8 sectors was covered in this study, and we did few analytical analysis by smart PLS, confirmatory composite analysis we done to ensure that this model was rigorous and then well fit. The apology for some technical jargons and research content. So there are the convergence validity, construct reliability. Those are some validity we ensured that these items are reliable and then relevant. Now focus on the contribution and managerial key takeaways. The theoretical contribution, this study mostly we focused on the stakeholder theories because the stakeholders are very crucial for our organizational development. It can be the internal, the primary stakeholders and the secondary stakeholders. This skill development provide a comprehensive overview for the managerial perspective. The managers and the policymakers, they can integrate into their organization. The country policymakers, they can relook and then they can take the key takeaways from there. But we also acknowledge some limitations, as all of the studies. This study mostly, my research was mostly focused on the manufacturing companies. Other industry can be tested, and then other regional context, Philippines also can be comparison can be possible on that. So now now I'm going to share my organizations and then one of the leading organization in Malaysia which focus on the sustainability and practice in sustainability for the impactful future. So we have a theme like campus with a conscience, and then we can. I welcome all of you to visit to Sanoe University. You can see that in each and every corner, all the practices are SDG focused and which reflect into our global rankings also. Now, this is one of the community projects which we run for a few years, which is the Sanoe Desa Mentary Community Development. We don't believe to confine ourselves into the theory. We also want to encourage our students and then our stakeholders to embrace with the sustainability, and that actually the purpose of the corporate. And then if all the corporate organizations, they come forward and then contribute from their own perspective, then it could be lead a great movement, and then the prosperous future overall contribution to the country's development will be happen. So this Desamentary community was, there are 5,000 households, and then our aim of Sanoe Group is to come up from the school level, primary level, until the PhD level. Okay, so this study, this community, we are regularly visited, and then we have few agendas and activities. Our students and the top management also, we are having like Bubur Lambuk initiative. We distributing the meals, nutritious meals, fostering the social cohesion and inclusive well-being. Our Sanoe Group hospitals, doctors, they are visiting there to ensure their well-being, mental health. We regularly conducted the climate literacy training developed by the Yunus Social Business School, and we also developed the books for the children aged 7 to 9 years old, which is led by our Sanoe Center of Planetary Health, so which educate our youth on healthy habits and sustainable practices. Not only Sanoe Group, the Petronas, Sam Derby, Maybank, and Top Globe, they're also contributing into the shared prosperity. Like Petronas, they are focusing on upskilling program, leadership pipelines, mental health support, and then annual training investment increasing. Sam Derby, they are focusing on TBET investment, structure career pathway for the blue-collar workers, fair wages, and safe condition. Maybank, they are focusing on humanizing financial service framework, financial literacy program, employee engagement, which increased 80%. And Top Globe, they are implementing the zero recruitment fee policy for migrant workers and enhance the labor transparency. So now, at the end of my presentation, I want to share that what is the most of the key challenges for our corporate, which can be the small, medium organizations or the mid-level organizations, to implement this sustainability or shared prosperity into the organization or organizational DNA. How can an organization, they can implement into their policy and their strategy? So this was the key concern, right? So Steward in business school, and then we have a center of planetary health, and then center of strategy and competitiveness. They comprehensively developed a framework, which is the ROB framework, return on value. Our organizations, corporates, their prime concern is the return on investment, right? But we believe that return on value, if we focus on that, it can be contributed into the sustainable development goal, and shared prosperity will be achieved besides our own investment and then the returns also. So that's why we come up with this framework. The first part of the framework is HR philosophy. Our president also shared that our organizations have to have the strategy and then the embedded with the organizational policy, right? So HR philosophy is like respect, rethink, reduce, reuse, recycle, restore, repurpose, and revitalize. This 8R philosophy moves to and integrated with the 8I ecosystem, which can be integrated into the organization, which is the infrastructure for digital architecture, intellectual capital, talent stock, integrated system, public-private governance and corporate governance, incentive system, institutional leadership and stewardship, because without the leadership, transactional leadership, transformational leadership, we cannot implement any kind of strategy, no matter how beautiful the themes or policy are there. And interaction, strategic partnership, and institutionalization, the global best practices and supply chain development. So these are the the 8I. So 8R and 8I combined with together, and which moves to the innovative capacity, adaptive capacity, and absorptive capacity. So since we are living into a dynamic world, and then there are so many complexities, the VUCA world, volatile, agile. So our organizations also have to adapt with these changes, and then have to redevelop, re-strategize their own capacity with these innovative capabilities. And then which moves to the ROB. So this is the overall, the value chain framework. 8R and 8I leads to the dynamic capability, and then competitiveness will be enhanced, which is the human economic development, nature-based product development, nature-based process improvement, sustainable business, social model innovation, intellectual property, IP, patent, copyright, and trademark, which can be outcome, which will be the win-win situation for the organization. And then return on value will be the environmental, economic, political, and societal contribution, so which is embedded with the corporate shared prosperity. So if organizations, they are operationalized this value chain position themselves, not only depends on the government initiative, they can foster the creativeness, and then the inclusive growth will be there. So I'm concluding my presentation here. Thank you so much. Yeah. And looking forward. Yeah.
Thank you, Mohammed. So I think we learned a lot from the existing initiative in Malaysia. And I think you will note right away in their framework, they also emphasize institutions as part of their shared prosperity initiative. And that links to the message of Dr. Jess earlier. And by the way, for those who are members of the Shared Prosperity Viber, I shared with you the instrument that he made. Now it's there. For those who found it a bit geeky, you can stay later during the cocktails, and we'll make sure with some alcohol it will be made more simple for you. This is just an advertising. We will have cocktails later. As you know, the best conversations happen after the summit, right? So that's where we convert a lot of this to the action that our President Donald is challenging us to pursue. So this time we go into the practice of shared prosperity, and I will invite also Dr. Jess to join the panel here on stage. So may I call the members of our panel here we will focus on the role of Filipino values in implementing business-level shared prosperity strategies. So may I call in sequence our panelists, who are, by the way, all MAP members, to take their seats on the stage, please, to join Dr. Jess. First, I call on Mr. Aurelio Ray Angeles, President of Filipinas Multiline Corporation, Dr. Patrick Patch Aure, the founding director of the FINMA DLSU Center for Business and Society, and of course, Secretary Herminio Sunny Coloma, who is currently publisher of the Manila Bulletin Publishing Corporation. A round of applause, please, for our panel members. It's also my pleasure to invite our very capable panel moderator. Let's all welcome Kate Lipana Gomez, who will moderate this important session. And by the way, for the question and answer format to follow after the messages of our panelists, we will have microphones for everyone to use. You know the drill. Don't make any speeches, just questions.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you.
So earlier we learned about governance stewardship, which are structure for shared prosperity. This time around, we will be learning about the soul of shared prosperity, which is the values. The values that shape our culture, our leadership, and our daily choices, which would make prosperity truly shared. So now let's begin our Filipino values panel. Sorry, I have to sit on this one. Sorry. Name man. Don't stay there. Thank you so much to our distinguished guests for being here with us today. Let us begin our panel with an opening statement with each of our very distinguished panelists by answering this question. So what does shared prosperity mean inside your institution for your employees, partners, customers, and even communities? And how do Filipino values play a role in making shared prosperity a reality in your organization? So who would like to start? Yeah. Mr.
Good afternoon. In our organization, the Manila Bulletin Publishing Corporation, shared prosperity is practiced through adherence to government rules and regulations, ensuring fair treatment of employees, equitable wages, a proper working environment, and giving growth opportunities for everyone. For myself, I have been involved in the study of how Filipino values shape the mindset and work attitudes of Filipino workers. And in 2017, through the People Management Association of the Philippines, 2 books were published. The first book was on Diwa, which was taken from my doctoral dissertation. And the other book was on Kapwa, which is taken from the work of member organizations of PMAP in actually practicing values in the workplace. And I think that to contextualize, despite periods of economic growth and resilience, income disparity remains one of the most important challenges in Philippine society. And this is something that is directly addressed by the advocacy for Diwa and Kapwa, the propagation of Filipino values, because we need to foster an environment and a mindset that promotes the essential well-being of every human person. that is a member of the organization. I can pass this on to Ray and to Patch.
With your indulgence, may I go to the rostrum? I prepared something written so that I can be more meaningful to our audience. Yeah, okay. Magandang hapon. Okay.
Sorry to interrupt lang, sir. By the way, we are raffling off 30 pieces of Mr. Angeles' book. And then, so if you would wonder how will you join the raffle, you just need to answer the feedback form that you can access via the QR code at the back of your IDs. So if you answer that, then you get an entry raffle to win one of the 30 books from Mr. Angeles.
Nabanggit na rin naman yung aking libro. Gusto kong sabihin sa inyo. Gusto ba niyong yumaman? Yes. Gusto ba niyong makatulong sa inyong kapwa? Gusto ba ninyo na ang ating bansa ay umunlad? May pinaparaffle akong libro. Sinulat ko. Gusto kong ibigay sa inyo. Palagay ko, meron kayong mapipick up doon. Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. Allow me to begin with a simple truth. As leaders, we are not only running companies. We are helping a nation built. Because every decision we make affects people, shapes behavior. And over time, this becomes the culture of our organization and the character of our economy. So, when we speak of shared prosperity, we are really speaking about how we lead, how we build people, and how we run our organization every day. Marami ang nagtatanong. By the way, meron ho bang mga foreigners dito na hindi nakakaintindi ng Tagalog? Is there anyone here who would like to get a translation of my message in English? Wala. Marami ang nagtatanong, ano ba ang Filipino values? Para sa akin, ang tunay na tanong ay hindi kung ano ang values, kundi kung paano natin ito isa sa buhay araw-araw sa ating organisasyon. Because values, whether we call them Filipino or universal, only become meaningful when they are practiced, measured, and lived. Let me share our simple mantra in Multiline, my company. Problema, ambisyon, visyon, sakripisyon, komisyon. Una, problema. Ano ba ang root cause ng ating problema? Most companies have values. Integrity, malasakit, excellence, teamwork. Pero sa aktwal, hindi na iintindihan ng tao. Hindi pinapaniwalaan. Hindi ginagawa araw-araw. So what happens? Walang consistency. Walang trust. At kung walang trust, walang competitiveness. At kung walang competitiveness, walang sustained prosperity. At ngayon, malinaw ang ating problema sa bansa. Ang oil crisis ay nandito na. Tumataas ang gastos, kaunti lang ang stock ng langis, great uncertainty. Paano natin gagamitin ang unang aral? Problema. Huwag nating tingnan ang krisis bilang hadlang, kundi bilang pagsubok kung gaano tayo kadisiplinado at kabilis kumilos. Gather your managers, ladies and gentlemen, kapwa leaders ko, once a week and ask 3 questions. Ano ang tunay na problema natin ngayon? Nasaan ang oportunidad sa sitwasyong ito? Ano ang gagawin natin ngayon? Dahil kung tama ang problema, susunod ang tamang aksyon. Because like people, nations do not prosper by intention. They prosper through competitive, united organizations. Pangalawa, ambisyon. Our ambition must be clear. Build values-driven, highly competitive organization. Build leaders who develop people. Build companies that create opportunity for many. Because success is not just magkano ang kinita natin. Ang tanong ay, gumagaling ba tayo sa araw-araw? Naiangat ba natin ang ating mga tao? Competitive ba tayo? Hindi lang lokal, kundi global. Pangatlo, vision o pamamaraan. How do we build competitiveness? Nagsisimula ito dito. Values must be transferred into systems, habits, action. Sa amin sa Multiline, mahalaga ang mantrang ito. Isa isip, isa puso, isa gawa. Naiintindihan, pinaniniwalaan, ginagawa. Because kung hindi naiintindihan, hindi paniniwalaan. Kung hindi pinaniniwalaan, hindi gagawin. Kung hindi gagawin, hindi gumagaling. Kung hindi gumagaling, hindi nagiging competitive. Our people are our real competitive advantage. Marami ang naniniwala na ang advantage comes from technology, capital, systems. But after decades in business, malinaw sa akin, our people and our culture are our competitive advantage. Because technology can be copied, capital can be accessed, systems can be learned. Pero ang disiplina, commitment, at values ng tao, hindi makukopya. At sa dulo, tao ang gumagawa ng resulta. Tao ang nagsosolve ng problema. Tao ang nag-i-innovate. So if we want competitiveness, we must build our people first. Values must be translated in daily behavior. Gawin nating praktikal. May malasakit ba tayo sa customer? Yan ang love. Hindi ba tayo sumusuko? Yan ang patient endurance. Consistent ba tayo? Yan ang faithfulness. May disiplina ba tayo? Yan ang self-control. Ito ang pundasyon ng high-performing organizations. Love, patient endurance, faithfulness, self-control. Pang-apat, sakripisyon. Competitiveness requires sacrifice. Kailangan nating itigil ang mediocrity, ang kawalan ng accountability, ang values na salita lang. At dito papasok ang aming prinsipyo sa multiline. Multiline finger pointing. Kapag may problema, huwag kang magtuturo at magsisisi ng iba. Because when you point your finger at somebody, tatlong daliri nakaturo sa sarili. Yung hinlalaki, nakaturo paakyat. Anong ibig sabihin? Una, huwag tayong maghanap ng masisisi. Pangalawa, sa daliri na nakaturo sa sarili natin, alamin ang ating pagkukulang. Saan tayo deficient? Pangatlo, hanapin kung paano natin matutulungan upang gumaling ang taong tinuturo natin. Huwag magsisisi, tumulong. Hindi lang ito accountability, ito ay leadership. Because competitive organizations are not built by blaming, but by developing people. Panglima, komisyon. Pag ginagawa natin ito, gagaling ang ating mga tao. Maniniwala ang ating mga tao sa atin. Tataas ang trust. Lalakas ang kumpanya. Magiging competitive tayo. At hindi lang kumpanya ang makikinabang, pati empleyado, pamilya, komunidad. At doon, lumalakas ang ekonomiya. Nagiging totoo ang shared prosperity. Mga kapwa kong leader sa MAP, ang Pilipinas na gusto natin, hindi mangyayari ng kusa, ni hindi man sa salita. It will be built sa paraan ng ating pamumuno, sa kalidad ng ating mga tao, sa disiplina ng ating organisasyon. So let me leave you with this. Competitiveness, it's not just a business goal. Ito ay responsibilidad natin sa bayan. Because every competitive company strengthens the Philippines. Every person we develop uplifts our nation. At sana, balang araw, kapag tinanong, paano umangat ang Pilipinas? Ang sagot ay, dahil may mga leaders na hindi lang nag-iisip, hindi lang naniniwala, kundi kumikilos araw-araw. Maraming salamat sa inyo.
Thank you so much, Mr. Angeles, for that very inspiring opening statement. So, what did we get from Mr. Angeles' short speech? The importance of developing our people, because after all, our people and our culture are our competitive advantage. And how do we develop our people? By instilling the values. So, instill the values, we develop our people, our companies' progress, and hopefully shared prosperity becomes real. So thank you so much, Mr. Angeles, for that very wonderful speech. So I now turn over the mic to Dr. Patch for your opening statement.
Magandang hapon po.
may pakilala lang po kasi yung mga kasama ko dito, mga rock stars at karamihan po sa inyo talagang kilala na, mga batikan na sa larangan ng pamamahala. So ako po si Patch. I'm representing the academe. I am currently an associate professor at the Department of Management Organization and also the director of the PINMA DLSU Center for Business and Society. So siguro yung mga pananaw ko nanggagaling dun sa paano ako nakikipag-usap dun sa mga estudyante na kasama ko at sa mga iba pang mga tao na nakakausap ko sa akin. Pero bago po ako magsimula, isa pong palaisipan na ano sa Pilipino ang shared prosperity? Ano yung pinakamagandang salita na magka-capture what is the Filipino translation? So it was a good exercise for us. I even have my thesis students, my undergraduate business students there. And fortunately, they were enrolled in a general education course taught by Professor Chow Chua. For those who know Professor Chow Chua, it's Chow Time, one of the popular historians also affiliated with the university. And naisip namin na kung gusto namin aralin ng shared prosperity na mas makaka-relate tayo, hanap tayo ng magandang salita. At yung ginagamit sa psikolohiyang Pilipino, ang pinakamalapit na term ay kaginhawaan. So yung maginhawang buhay na pag inisip natin, di ba meron siyang roots on yung maluwag na paghinga, sapat lang, hindi siya sobra, hindi siya greed. At the same time, you think of ginhawa as, kasama ko yung pamilya ko, kasama ko yung mga mahal ko sa buhay. Kaya naisip namin, ang ganda na ang Pilipino ng shared prosperity ay kaginhawaan o yung maginhawang buhay. Then the next question, yung inaral ngayon ng mga thesis students ko, kasama ko. So how do we manage for shared prosperity? And dito kami humingi ng maraming ideya sa mga nakasulat na. So isa dito yung mga nasulat na po nila Secretary Sonny, nila Sir Jude. And nakita namin na very useful concept is diwa, kapwa, and then sinama namin yung loob na baka pamilya na rin po kayo sa konsepto na yun. So DKL, kumbaga that's the acronym that I would like to use to represent Filipino management in a sense na DKL, diwa, kapwa, at loob. Tapos pag binasa natin yung DKL, pwede mo sabihin na dakila, di ba? Parang dakilang pamamaraan ng pamamahala. And gusto ko simulan yung pagninilay ko na sabihin na medyo naiingit ako sa pambansang samahan ng psikolohiyang Pilipino. Kasi naisip nila na, teka, bakit tayo kumukuha ng Western concepts to explain psychology? Di ba meron naman likas na mga salita na pwedeng magbigay kahulugan sa paano nagmamahala ang mga Pilipino? So, siguro isa sa mga challenge ko sa ating MAP members, we are the Management Association of the Philippines. Ba't hindi natin subukan na gumawa tayo ng pamamahalang Pilipino? Kasi nandyan naman na yung mga constructs. At hindi ko to sinasabi dahil na-discover ko sila o dahil ako yung parang originator, but more of I can see in the young ones and in other people na we need to have Filipino language be explained and teach Filipino management in the way we know how, na hindi lang tayo humihiram sa ibang bansa. So, yung pamamahalang Pilipino, pagka na meron tayong kagandaang loob, pakikipagkapwa-tao, saka diwa na talagang pangbansa, that can lead to shared prosperity or kaginhawaan. Pero, sinasabi ko yon, ngunit ayokong sabihin na, just because we think of Filipino values, everything is positive. In my reflection on the corruption issues, sadly, we can say that some of the Filipino orientations that we have can lead to corruption. For example, kapag masyado tayong sarado sa kapwa na, hindi, ibang tao yan, hindi ka kasama sa barkada ko, hindi kasama sa pamilya ko, hindi yan exclusive. So yung nagiging masyadong micro yung pakikipagkapwa-tao na focus lang sa iilan, kaya nagkakaroon ng greed. Kapag naman sa kagandahan ng loob, kapag masyadong sarado yung loob na ako lang yung tama, nagiging makasarili tayo. At sa diwa, may tayong mga nakikita na fanatic behaviors. Na basta sinabi ni idol ni Lodi, okay na, hindi na ako mag-iisip, si Lodi na bahala dyan. So, ang role natin bilang mga stakeholders in the association, in business education, and business persons, we need to be facilitating conditions so that the orientations that we have are not only values but become virtues. Because if we don't do anything, they can be perverted versions that lead to kahirapan instead of kaginhawaan. So to end my point, I'd like to build on what Doc Jess mentioned a while ago about good governance. So how can we operationalize good governance within this framework? ang nasa isip ko ay dapat maging strategic and mission-based yung mamamahala natin sa mga institutions. Pero dapat din natin kalimutan yung kultura. Ano yung kultura Pilipino na kinukultivate natin? We have to cultivate culture. Because structures and cultures will empower change agents. And one of my ulterior motives for bringing some of my undergraduate students here is they are the future. Lagi natin sasabi, kabataan ay pag-asa ng bayan. But we need to manage our country well so that we produce empower change agents. So, to end my initial reflection and statement, I want us to claim a DKL, a dakilang pamamahalang Pilipino na para sa tunay na kaginhawaan. So, maraming salamat po.
Thank you so much, Dr. Patch. So Dr. Patch presented to us a challenge that we develop a Filipino style of management. I'm sure all of us here you were educated in yung Western style of management, even the training that we get from Western practices. So we are being presented with a challenge here. Why don't we have our own, based on our own values, so that our growth will really trickle down to our fellow men. So that's the proposition of Dr. Patch. I think Secretary Coloma also prepared a similar opening statement, so maybe we can hear from you again, sir.
Take two. There is a phrase we often invoke with pride yet struggle to fully live by, kapwa. It is usually translated as others or fellow men, but in truth, it goes much deeper. It speaks of a shared identity, a recognition that the self is never separate from the community. In my earlier work on Diwa and in our co-authored book, Kapwa, we advanced a simple yet profound proposition that the values-based ethos, Diwa, naturally leads to a more humane and inclusive regard for Kapwa. And from this flows a stronger commitment to the common good. Today, I would like to revisit that proposition in the context of one of our most persistent national challenges, the pursuit of shared prosperity in a society marked by stark and stubborn inequality. Let us begin with a candid acknowledgement. Despite periods of economic growth and resilience, income disparity in our country remains deeply entrenched. Wealth continues to concentrate in narrow sectors, while large segments of our population struggle with precarious livelihoods, limited access to quality education, and inadequate social protection. We speak of growth, yet too often it is growth that excludes. Why does this persist? Part of the answer lies in what some have described as a bureaucrat capitalist state, an ecosystem where political and economic power reinforce each other, often to the detriment of broad-based development. In such a system, policies may be crafted not for many but for the few. Opportunities are unevenly distributed, and institutions that should level the playing field instead perpetuate advantage. This is a structural problem, to be sure, but it is also at its core a question of values. And this is where Diwa Kapwa becomes not just relevant but essential. Diwa, as we have defined it, is the animating spirit, the inner compass that shapes our decisions, our priorities, and our sense of purpose. It is what guides leaders when they choose between self-interest and public service, between expediency and principle. When Diwa is anchored on integrity, empathy, and accountability, it transforms governance, business, and civic life. But Diwa does not exist in isolation. It finds its fullest expression in Kapwa. When we truly embrace Kapwa, we no longer see inequality as an abstract statistic. We see it as a lived reality affecting people who are, in essence, part of ourselves. The distance between us and them collapses. Indifference gives way to concern, concern to action. Imagine for a moment how this perspective reshapes our approach to development. A business leader guided by Diwa Kapwa does not measure success solely by profit margins. Its focus is on how value is created and shared, how workers are treated, how communities are uplifted, how environmental resources are stewarded. Profit remains important, but it is pursued within a broader framework of responsibility. A public servant animated by Diwa Kapwa resists the temptations of patronage and rent-seeking. Instead, he or she prioritizes transparency, fairness, and inclusivity in policymaking. Programs are designed not as dole-outs, but as pathways to empowerment. A citizen imbued with Diwa Kapwa moves beyond passive expectation. There is a willingness to participate, to hold institutions accountable, and contribute, however modestly, to collective well-being. In this sense, Diwa Kapwa is not a slogan. It is a discipline. It requires conscious effort to align our actions with our professed values, especially in environments where the opposite is often rewarded. Now, some might ask, can values alone overcome structural inequality? The honest answer is no, not by themselves. We still need sound economic policies, institutional reforms, and effective governance. We need to invest in education, healthcare, infrastructure, and innovation. We must strengthen regulatory frameworks to ensure fair competition and curb abuses. But here is the critical point. Without the grounding of Diwa Kapwa, even the best designed policies can falter. Policies are implemented by people. Institutions are run by people. Markets are shaped by human behavior. If the underlying ethos remains self-serving or indifferent, reforms will be diluted, circumvented, or captured. Conversely, when a critical mass of leaders and citizens internalize Diwa Kapwa, reform gains traction. There is greater trust in institutions, stronger cooperation across sectors, and a more resilient commitment to long-term goals. This is particularly important in our present moment where the challenges we face, economic inequality, climate vulnerability, technological disruption, are complex and interconnected. They demand not only technical solutions, but also moral clarity. Allow me to bring this closer to home, especially for those of us in the Management Association of the Philippines. MAP has long stood for excellence in management and leadership. But excellence today must be redefined. It is no longer sufficient to be efficient or innovative. We must also be inclusive and compassionate. The measure of leadership is not just how well we grow our organizations, but how meaningfully we contribute to national development. In practical terms, this means embedding Diwa Kapwa in corporate strategies through fair wages, inclusive hiring, responsible sourcing, and community engagement. It means advocating for policies that promote equitable growth, even when these may require short-term adjustments. It means mentoring the next generation of leaders to value not just success, but significance. Shared prosperity, after all, is not an automatic outcome of economic growth. It is a deliberate choice, a collective decision to ensure that progress benefits the many, not just the few. And that choice begins within each of us. If we are to move closer to the dream of a more equitable society, we must reclaim and live out the essence of who we are as a people. Diwa Kapwa is not an abstract ideal. It is a practical guide for action. It reminds us that our destinies are intertwined, that the well-being of one is bound to the well-being of all. In the end, the question is not whether shared prosperity is possible. It is whether we have the will, the diwa, to see our kapwa not as others, but as extensions of ourselves. When we do, the path forward, while still challenging, becomes clearer and far more attainable. Thank you.
For Secretary Coloma, the structural inequality problem is a question of values, and that he proposes to embed Diwa Kapwa as an inner compass that shapes our decision toward shared prosperity. So Kapwa meaning one of us. Therefore, as we strive to achieve progress, as we strive to develop policies, practices, and provide opportunities, we shouldn't look only to ourselves, to our companies, but to our kapwa, tao, to our fellow men and fellow Filipinos. Okay, so Mr. Dr. Stanislao, is there something else that you'd like to add apart from what you've already shared earlier? Dr. Stanislao, is there anything else that you'd like to add?
I endorse everything that Sunny said. I've always been a great fan of his, and I continue to be so.
Okay, so he's just echoing Secretary Coloma's words. So anyway, as Dr. Ben mentioned a while ago, there are microphones on the floor. If you have questions for our panelists, feel free to raise them. Yeah, just yes, please, Steve, Mr. Steve. But please introduce yourself and your organization as well.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Sorry. I'm Steve Araneta. I just retired from the corporate world. I have a question for Sec Coloma and Dr. Stanislao. We talk of Filipino values, but I'd like to address the elephant in the room, which is corruption. And also, we have a global crisis. My question to you is that the problems we face today has been there since the time of President Garcia, which is underproductive agriculture, corruption, loss of faith in government. This has been around. This has been recurring. But you touched on something today that more than personal values, it requires a structure that can provide a framework that can help in the transition from one administration to another. My question now is that if our government changes every 6 years, what is that framework and what is that structure that organizations like MAP can endorse or execute to help address these issues for the long term? I hope my question is clear, but I'm alluding to a structure. Like, we talk of personal values. I witnessed the EDSA revolution, so we are at a high. But after a while, it dwindles down again, and we're in the same situation again. So what's that structure that we can use, that the private sector can participate in, that can help in developing a long-term shared prosperity? That's my question.
Well, I think Dr. Stanislao amplified that earlier. And, I had the privilege of serving with him after EDSA during the Cory Aquino administration. He served as Economic Planning Secretary. And I thought that period represented one in which governance where the seeds of good governance were being planted. And as he explained in his presentation, this is a process that had to be continued. And so in the private sector, he pursued this through the Institute for Solidarity in Asia and other similar organizations with which he is associated. But I would like to give a very concrete example. And I'm very happy that Secretary Babe Singson is here. Because Secretary Babe Singson served with distinction in the Department of Public Works and Highways from 2010 to 2016. And I could say very confidently that there was no or very little corruption in the DPWH during Secretary Singson's time. And perhaps, I hope he doesn't recuse out of modesty. Perhaps he can share with us what he did, because I thought it was not a magic formula, it was not something mysterious, but it was something that was executed with will, of course, backed by a president who supported him and who also modeled the same values. But perhaps the best person to talk about this would be Secretary Babe Singson. So how about it, Babes? Would you like to take the microphone next to you on the floor?
Thank you so much, Sunny, for the kind words. But I must acknowledge that it could only happen because you had the support of President Noynoy. He gave very clear mandate. I was probably the last cabinet secretary that he appointed. And I was happy already being president of Maynila at that time. But for some reason, I did accept the challenge. No? But I must acknowledge that the same story has happened in my previous assignments. You need to change the culture of the organization. That the difficulty of what I was getting into was DPWH was always among the top most corrupt. No? Naglalaban lang yung tatlo dyan eh. DPWH, BIR, or Customs. Tatlo lang yan. Pataasan ng corruption dyan. No? And so I had to ask an external help from a PR consultant in the person of Yoli Ong, Villanueva Ong. I asked her, can you do a survey, which she also did when I was with Maynilad. What do people expect from the new administration in DPWH? And they came out with a very simple, very crisp mandate. Right project, right cost, right quality. As straightforward as that. People expect DPWH to use government funds for the right project, right cost, right quality. And then of course, as I explained this to President Noynoy, he said, I'll add two more, right on time and by the right people. And I took the cue when he said right people, will you authorize me to replace 20% of DPWH? The task that I was doing, which is to replace 20% of the people in DPWH to change the culture altogether, starting from the USEC all the way to the district engineers. And I had the support of Secretary Abad and President Noynoy. I said, for me to do this, I need to give early separation pay or kick them out if they have cases. The cases there range from womanizing, everything. So, simply said, we adopted a very concise vision which became our mandate. I also had the support of ICD They were monitoring our targets, very clear quarterly monitoring by the private sector. We were asked to present targets on a quarterly basis, on a yearly basis, and we had the benefit of Secretary Stanislao, Rex Drilon monitoring our performance on a quarterly basis, and they gave us, luckily for us, we got very good grades. So, but the most difficult was standing up against Congress. I told President Noynoy, and he was very upset when I said, "Boss, kung 10% lang ang kupit dyan, santo sa akin." Sabi ko, and he said, "Huwag kang pumayag kahit 10%. No? So anyway, the 10% I said will come from the profit of the contractors. By just going through the proper public bidding, no, where all who wanted to participate, I asked them to sign an integrity pledge. That was a requirement. If you want to participate, sign an integrity pledge. Otherwise, if you don't sign an integrity pledge, you're disqualified from participating. No? So anyway, what happened in Congress, with the help of then Senate President Frank Liron and Senate Speaker Sani Belmonte and Boyet Gonzales, 1 week before the hearings of the budget, they would call me in and say, "Your confessional room is ready." Meaning, all the congressmen who wanted to discuss their projects with DPWH, they would queue in that particular confessional room and we would discuss. Ito lang yung projects na pwede nyong pagawa sa distrito nyo. If you put anything in that budget that is not in this menu, even if it is there, I will not implement it. Ganon kaliwanag yan. So they had national road, national bridges, specific projects that would connect local roads to the national road. Kasi dati, farm to market road. Yung pala, road to my farm. Siya lang nakinabang doon. Inaspalto niya yung driveway niya, yung property in front of his farm. Yung pala ibig sabihin noon. Sabi ko, hindi pwede yan. The local roads have to be connected to a national road. So it was very clear. And on the day of the hearing itself, I made it very clear to all of them. If any of you, after this deliberate discussions on the budget of DPWH, if you grandstand and question this, I assure you I will reduce your budget in your congressional district. That was. And I was ready to resign if somebody wanted me out. In fact, a lady, congresswoman said, "Sek, kaya kitang paalis." Naku, sabi ko sa kanya, magpapasalamat ang asawa ko pag napatanggal niyo. I was very bold because I had the support of President Noynoy. So, Sani, the formula is clear. Clear vision, stand by your principles, not being afraid to be kicked out or not to be afraid to resign for your job. Because I've done that in the past. I was asked to do something by the highest official of the land. I decided to quit the following day. Don't worry about me. The following day, I'll submit my resignation. Period. That's the formula I've been taking.
Thank you, Secretary Bates.
Well, to justify my presence here, since I'm probably the oldest person in the room, let me speak from the heart and let me speak from experience in the same way as Babe Singson has spoken about his experience. Let me start with something very personal. My first assignment in government was the Development Bank of the Philippines, bankrupt. 92% of its assets were NPAs. I was given the assignment, very clear. Either you close the bank or rehabilitate it. Very clear vision of what needed to do. Quite frankly, from the technical standpoint, to rehabilitate the bank for an economist is no dreamer. It's something that economists do every day. You remove many of the bad assets that you had, put them somewhere else, get new capital, and restructure the bank financially. But very clear from the beginning, I knew that I inherited a government institution, financial institution, that had wrong values. And therefore, that was something that needed to be addressed. I promoted Filipino values. Delicadeza. 9 or 10 of them, addressing them to the Filipino people, but actually addressed to everybody in DBP. That's why when I talk to audiences like this, I talk about values. Because you cannot have technical solutions only unless you focus on the cultural challenges that you have. And that's why I came with this message. Hey guys, 4 core values of the Philippines. Magka-Diyos, magka-tao, magkakalikasan, magkabansa. That's DBP. I did it in 3 years. Until now, it's still there. And the government is sucking money out of it, to my consternation and despair. The second assignment that I had, Sunny knows this, NEDA and eventually Department of Finance. What was the clear objective? In the case of DBP, it was rehabilitation of the bank. In the case of NEDA and the Department of Finance, rehabilitation of our financial system. You had to get back to international global markets. No ifs and buts about it. Otherwise, we would never be able to get out of the crisis we were in 1983, 84, 85. So no matter what everybody said, we're just focused. By the way, I was not alone. I had several people, Jobo Fernandez, Jimmy Ungpin, Winnie Bunsod, and above all, Joey Quisha, who is still very much around. We banded together and say, clear objective, get the Philippines back to international financial markets. We did it. And as a matter of fact, one of my most exhilarating experiences was that as soon as I got out of government, I worked together with PLDT, the first Philippine institution to be able to get back to global bond markets. So, done. So after that, you can ride into the sunset. But the problems of the country continue. The person who asked the question, poverty has always been with us. By the way, even before Garcia's time, I must tell you, I've written the history of the Philippines. Even during the barangay time, we already had poverty. Corruption was already there at the level of the barangay. Lack of civic-mindedness, not enough concern for the Filipino community, was already there at the barangay level. Our DNA as a people has a lot of challenges. And therefore, we have to recognize this. Endemic. And they are related to one another. Lack of civic concern, and therefore corruption, and therefore poverty. These three together, they're systemic. You cannot attack them one by one. And that's why you need a good, clear vision of how we can get out of this current mess into what we call as Dream Philippines. And in order to be able to do that, you have to be very clear as a people what we are trying to build. You as Filipinos in this room, what are we trying to do? You get 130 different opinions about many different things. We heard it already from the panel members. But at the end of the day, you must focus on the systemic ills of the Philippines, which are framed by poverty, promoted by corruption, and corruption because of our lack of civic-mindedness for the entire community and the Filipino people. How do we begin doing that? This is Philippines 2026. What are we talking about? We're talking about Dream Philippines. And there are three areas that many Filipinos have not addressed, and we're not addressing, and we continue to run away from them. Babe Singson knows this so well. The first one is, what do we do with our natural resources? Not about China, not about anybody else, but our seas, our marine, our forest, our mineral. We have a Secretary of Trade and Industry here. In the case of Fred Pascual, he is TOEFL, the outstanding Filipino. We need many more of this. He was addressing these issues when he was in DTI. With our natural resources, very few people are thinking about it. Second, we're draining Filipinos away, and we're not thinking about it. And are we building the country just by sending Filipinos to the Middle East? Just by sending entertainers to Japan? This must be more that we can do as a country. And I cry to the highest heavens, what is the clear goal that we're aiming at? The same clear goal as I had when I rehabilitated the Development Bank of the Philippines. The same clear goal that we had when we said we must get this country out of the financial hole that we're in. We've got to get back to global financial markets. And the third one, very clear, and I think the SEC chairman is going to come a little bit later. Our financial and capital markets, we're allowing the thing to drain away. We have some of the best finance guys in Southeast Asia, but they're all working elsewhere. In the meanwhile, what are we doing with our banking system? One of the best in the world, but not inclusive. Most of our people do not trust the banks. We're dealing now with cooperatives in Mindanao. Several of them billionaires. What are they doing? Putting their money together and putting them in banks, which turn around and give it to the big corporations. In the meanwhile, the farmers are left without finance. What is this? And these are three major challenges we have to address in the next 3 years, 6 years, 9 years. What do we do with our human resources so that we can do something beyond just becoming a call center of the world? What are we going to do with our human resources? Babes has been crying about our water supply, the irrigation systems. Everybody is kanya-kanya. No dream, no rehabilitation, no thinking, and all of us are happy going from one thing to another with our different theories. So three critical areas. Are there Filipinos who are addressing all of this for the long term? What are we doing with our natural resources so that we can grow 3 percentage points more than 5-6%? What are we doing with our human resources? My colleague Bernie Villegas has been pounded by all sorts of people saying, hey, this is a basic resource. We're cutting it down. And he's been doing that for several decades. And then everybody says, okay, the Filipino is a wonderful resource. But beyond being a call center, we talk about Boracay, we talk about Palawan, and so on and so forth. Our tourism industry is not integrated, is not systemic. And therefore, we continue with the three systemic problems that we have: poverty, corruption, and lack of civic mindedness. And meanwhile, address to MAP. Think of Dream Philippines. Address these three things that we have. What we do with our financial resources, what we do with our human resources, and what we do with our human resources. And if we do that, we can begin to have prosperity which we can share. We have to be stewards of this nation. And we have to rise up to the occasion that we are in crisis today. We are a generation of Filipinos that can make a lot of difference for this country and address all those endemic issues that have been with us according to the questionnaire since President Garcia. I'm sorry for such a long diatribe, but I thought I should justify my presence here this afternoon.
Thank you so much, Dr. Stanislao. So with that, unfortunately, we have to end our panel. So thank you once again for our distinguished panelists for sharing your time, experience, and insights with us. So indeed, it's not a matter of just having values and principles that we aspire for. We need to live the values in our day-to-day so that it becomes a culture, a way of life, and hopefully that curbs corruption and other obstacles that prevent prosperity from being shared with many. So
Thank you very
back
much,
to you.
Kate. Yeah. So our final speaker is already in the house, so I've asked his permission if he can join us for the group picture because Dr. Stanislao is already leaving. May I already advance my introduction for our final speaker. As you know, the corporate sector is the most powerful wealth-creating engine in our country, and I think it is key to the shared prosperity movement. So may I call on SEC Chairman Francis Lim. Attorney Lim, can you join us for the group picture? Let's all welcome Chairman Francis. And then after the picture, very quickly, we will give the floor to Attorney Francis for his message for our summit. May I also call on the other members of the committee who are part of the leadership. Thank you, Chairman. JJ, Joanna, could you join us for the picture?
Sunny.
Then our photographer.
Oh, my boss.
Is the President here? Is Donald Lim in the house? Lumalagari kasi siya. Once again, our sincerest gratitude to the members of the panel.
So, Francis,
I think you can all agree that we've had a very substantive sharing of ideas, and hopefully we can deepen our shared prosperity movement guided by Filipino values. Because after all, it's a cultural resource that is available for us. It made me reflect that our neighboring countries, Malaysia, Singapore, Korea, and even Vietnam, has a national framework for development, which they hold consistently through several administrations. So it's not just a matter of the electoral cycle. So we come to our closing keynote. And as I mentioned earlier, the corporate sector is a powerful creator of value in our economy. I always reflect that in the 2000s, we had 3 billionaires in the Forbes list, I recall. But as the pandemic approached, we had 22 billionaires, which means the corporate sector really produces a lot of wealth. The challenge now is how to make this an engine for inclusive growth in our country, and this is where the regulatory aspect becomes very important. So now it is my privilege to call on our closing keynote speaker, who is of course a recognized past president of MAP, and he was also president of the Shareholders Association of the Philippines when we were able to advocate for the SEC to bring back the stakeholder principle to the Code of Corporate Governance. So friends, join me in welcoming the Chairman of the Securities and Exchange Commission. Please welcome Attorney Francisco Francis Lim. Chairman.
Thank you, Dr. Ben. First, President Donald Lim, where are you? Dr. Justice, of course, like the guru of governance here in the Philippines. Of course, Dr. Ben. Distinguished leaders of the MAP, friends of government and media, ladies and gentlemen. As we bring this summit to a close, we are left with one defining question. What kind of growth truly deserves the nation's trust? Because growth alone is not enough. For prosperity to be worthy of our people, it must widen opportunity, rest on its strong institutions, reinforce confidence in our rules, and leave our country more just, more resilient, and more inclusive than we found it. Sa madaling salita ho, hindi sapat na lumago tayo. Kailangan maramdaman ng madami ang pag-asenso. That vision took concrete form on November 5, 2020, when I was president of the MAP. At a time of profound disruption caused by the COVID pandemic, when the Philippine business community came together and signed the Covenant for Shared Prosperity. That covenant was more than a statement of intent. It was a conscious act, a recognition that business cannot remain indifferent to inequality and must help build an economy where value is not only created but must be deliberately shared. It affirmed a simple but powerful idea that business success and national progress must move together. And that growth earns legitimacy only when it is anchored on fairness, inclusion, and responsibility. Today, at the Securities and Exchange Commission, we carry that covenant forward. Not as aspiration, but as action. Through reforms that shape how markets function, how capital flows, and how opportunity is created. Allow me to briefly reflect on how these commitments are being translated into practice at the SEC. First, the covenant calls on business to develop people to the best that they can be, regardless of gender, background, or circumstance. At the SEC, we've aligned policy with that principle. Board diversity is highly encouraged because leadership must reflect the full breadth of our nation's talent. And the market is responding. Social and gender bonds are channeling capital to women-led enterprises and underserved communities. Inclusion, demonstrating that inclusion is not only a social good, but an economic advantage. Second, the Covenant on Shared Prosperity commits business to deliver value. For regulators like us, that means public service that is efficient, predictable, and accessible. We reduce SEC fees, especially for our MSMEs, saving the public almost 275 million pesos since I joined the SEC mid of 2025 until as of February 2026. We impose firm timelines, and beyond those timelines, applications are deemed approved, subject to post-approval audit. And through digitalization, processes that once took weeks and even months can now be completed in hours. Ito ay tungkol, hindi lang ito tungkol sa efficiency, ito ay tungkol sa pagbubukas ng pinto para mas marami ang makapasok, makapagsimula at makapagtagumpay. Third, the covenant calls for fairness across the value chain. In markets, it begins and ends with good governance. We are filing cases against those that destroy public trust in our market, no matter who they are. Strengthening board independence to the dismay of some of my personal friends, and advancing beneficial ownership transparency. Because for us, trust is the invisible currency of our markets and the foundation of more inclusive prosperity. These reforms are definitely not easy, and as you may have read in the news or on social media, they are encountering headwinds, some cases against the SEC. But we at the SEC will remain steadfast because for us, discipline today is what sustains credibility tomorrow. Fourth, the covenant calls on business to be present where needs are greatest. Through targeted frameworks like our SEC Farms, HOPs, Powers and Rent, we are enabling capital to flow more efficiently to agriculture, healthcare, energy, and housing. Dito nagiging totoo ang shared prosperity kapag ang kapital ay umaabot sa magsasaka, sa pasyente, sa marginalized sectors. Fifth, the Covenant on Shared Prosperity recognizes that prosperity must endure across generations. We adopted ISSB-aligned sustainability disclosures and are launching capacity building programs. Through the Philippine Green Equity Lane, we are recognizing companies genuinely aligned with sustainability. Because for us, stewardship must move beyond intention. It must be embedded in how decisions are made and how value is created. Six, the covenant calls for fair treatment and just returns for all investors. We have been strengthening the investment ecosystem, lowering the cost of raising capital, streamlining approvals, liberalizing our rules like the rules governing the REIT, PERA law, shelf registration, exempt transactions, qualified buyers, and just before I left the SEC, we have uploaded our memo circular establishing umbrella funds while preserving investor protection and accountability. Because when markets are fair, predictable, and proportionate, capital stays, and growth and prosperity become more meaningful and sustainable. And yet, even the strongest framework is not enough. The Covenant for Shared Prosperity, I think signed in November 2020, was never meant to remain a document. It was meant to become a discipline, a way of doing business. The SEC can set the rules, but it is business that gives those rules life. The real challenge is not compliance, it is conviction. To raise capital responsibly, to govern with integrity, to create value in ways that people can genuinely feel. Because shared prosperity is not something we distribute after it is created. It must be built into the very value that we create. The MAP has long championed that vision. The Covenant gave it voice. The task now is to give it meaning and continuity. Our country, the Philippines, does not lack talent, enterprise, or ambition. What we must continue to build on are institutions worthy of that strength. Institutions that convert growth into trust and enterprise into legitimacy. At the SEC, we shall do our part, no matter what the cost will be. Because when opportunity widens, when governance becomes real, when markets are fair, prosperity does more than grow. It gains legitimacy, it endures, and only then can prosperity be truly shared. Maraming salamat po sa inyong lahat. Magandang hapon. Thank you very much.
So I'm sure we have some questions from members of the audience. Let me start with my first question because I remember first hearing from you in 2010 when you were president of the Philippine Stock Exchange. So it's an interesting situation we find ourselves in. But you were always advocating for inclusive corporate growth even then. And in fact, I remember the Maharlika board, which you were advocating, which called for a higher float for shares. And then when you became president of the Shareholders Association of the Philippines, you advocated that the stakeholder principle be returned to the Code of Corporate Governance. When you became president of the MAP, you pushed for the Covenant for Shared Prosperity, and now you are here, full circle now as chairman of the SEC. May I ask you your candid view? What is really the most important obstacle blocking us from moving towards a shared prosperity mindset in the business sector? Or more specifically in the corporate sector? What needs to change in terms of institutional values? May I know your view on this?
Well, for me, discipline, no? It's lack of self-sacrifice. Okay? Because when we always talk, we talk about the good of the country. Then what is being done by the government collides with our personal interests we push back. I'm now experiencing that. At the PSE, for example, we've been talking about how sad our market is compared to the other markets. But when we do reforms, or our regulators even then want us to reform, we push back. Okay? Parang dapat gawin natin ito, pero pag hindi consistent sa interest ko, dapat exception ako. Di ba?
So parang kulang ng bayanihan.
Parang kulang, no?
Oo.
So that's the reason why we're now doing what we're doing at the SEC. Trying to accelerate things that have been done long before I joined the SEC. Sabi nila, nagmamadali ako, pero ang sagot ko, matagal na dapat ginawa yan.
So our capacity for self-sacrifice is really being challenged. I remember during the Asian financial crisis in the late 90s, in the case of South Korea, 6 major banks collapsed, if you remember. And yet, when the Korean government asked for self-sacrifice, the Koreans donated their heirlooms, their gold, to the government. I remember.
I think the same happened in Thailand.
See, so the capacity for self-sacrifice. I remember the Koreans who even shaved their heads. Ang daming kalbo nun sa Korea. And then they said they will only grow it back once Korea recovers. And of course, the rest is history. If we look at Korea now, nobody even remembers that they were hit by the... Can you imagine if the top 6...
Korea, I think represented by its president then, went to the world begging for
Yes.
help.
Yeah, I remember
He was
that
that
very
humble,
well.
no?
Yeah.
You look at Korea now.
And so all the citizens also supported it. So I think that's a key insight, no? Our capacity for self-sacrifice, for bayanihan spirit will be tested as we push for shared prosperity. Yes, I'd like to give the floor to Mon for his question, and then to June Kabuchan. Go ahead, Mon.
Chair Francis.
Hi, Mon.
Hi. Great speech. What is your personal advice in terms of countering the entrenched forces in our country that keeps us poor?
Just do what you believe in, no? Of course, after complete staff work, complete due diligence. I think there are forces that will push back. And you really have to be steadfast in what you do. Okay? Like I think I saw Babes a while ago. And yes, yeah. You really have to really sacrifice yourself. You know, this position was offered to me 1 year before I took office and was pushing back. I was thinking. And when I finally decided, part of the risk I said I should take on is to lose friends. Because what I'm going to do will disappoint people, even my friends. But so be it.
All right. So I think we need to increase the supply of the courage to act on our convictions. No? And I think that's where role models really come in. Especially for young people, we need to really see more role models of those who can act on their convictions despite personal loss. June, would you like to ask the next question?
Magandang hapon po. Nabanggit niyo po yung halaga ng sacrifice. Nabanggit din po ito kanina ng isa nating speaker, sakripisyon ang tawag niya. Bakit po ang mga pamunuan natin, at siguro marami na ring Pilipino, ang hindi handang magsakripisyo? Kulang po ba ang dahilan nila para magsakripisyo? Hindi po ba nila nakikita yung dahilan para kailangan magsakripisyo? Ano po ang kailangan nating gawin para ipaunawa sa ating mga kababayan na kailangan nating magsakripisyo? Hindi yung puro sarili lang natin ang iniisip. Ano po ang kailangan nating gawin para turuan silang magsakripisyo?
Self-sacrifice.
Opo, self-sacrifice.
You really have to sacrifice your private interest. Bakit?
Yung burning ano, no, yung burning desire
I
to
think
sacrifice.
it's love of country, no? First and foremost. If you have that, if the fear of God, you have love the country, you don't fear anything.
Dapat meron kang hope.
Can you, Fred, sige.
Fred, could you share that on mic there?
Fred and I have been advocating for change, di ba?
But I was just saying, you know, why self-sacrifice? Why should you self-sacrifice if there's nothing bigger out there, you know, that you want to happen or that you expect to happen? I said, people who will go through self-sacrifice will do it because now that there's something bigger out there, which in our case, what we should be looking for is that we should trust that there will be something good that will come out of it for the country. Wala pa tayo, ano para tayo eh, sabi nga ni Jess eh, barangay's time pa rin. Di ba? May corruption na, merong kanya-kanya. Barangay pa rin tayo
experience
ngayon
ko
eh,
dyan, no?
kanya-kanya pa rin eh.
Parang ano eh, nakikita ko, what's good for me is good for the country. It should be the other way around. What's good for the country is good for me. Dapat ganun.
June, you had a follow-up? Parang yung kay Kennedy, no? Ask not what you're...
Yes, para sa akin lang po, simple ang sagot eh. Kung ang pinuno ko, mahal ako, mamahalin ko rin siya. Kung ang pinuno ko, gagawin ang lahat para sa akin, gagawin ko rin ang lahat para sa kanya. Kapag yan ang sinabi mo na tama para sa bayan, pakikinggan kita. Pero kailangan iparamdam mo munang mahal mo ako. Ganun po ang hinihingi sa lahat sa atin. Mahalin natin ang ating empleyado, mahalin natin ang ating mamamayan. Pag minahal natin sila, gagawin nila ang lahat para sa atin. Yun po ang karanasan ko.
Salamat,
Thank you for
June.
saying that.
Yeah. Are there any more? Yes, Cliff, way back. Which reminds me that love is a core value in our preamble. No? After truth, justice, freedom, equality, and peace, there is love. Cliff, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I'm a fan of your work. I'll take a slightly different take to this whole thing. I believe that business is by default selfish. Self-interest, and any economist knows this. And that's precisely why there are externalities, market failures. So my question is there, if you look at independent directors, these good governance, compliance, all of this did not exist a few years back. Then ICD pushed for it, there was advocacy, there were examples, and then it got into regulation. Same thing with ESG reporting. Nobody heard about ESG reporting before. And then there were conferences, people started to talk about it, examples came out. Now it's in regulation. My question is, what do we do to get some of the principles of shared prosperity into the regulation so that they become part of required reporting by SEC? What are your suggestions around that?
It's a challenge, no, to legislate things, no. Kasi there will be pushback. Overreach kayo, sila sabi, di ba? I've heard that time and again. But you know, things like this, no, yung shared prosperity forum like this, I think will pave the way for shared prosperity to eventually become regulation. If people do not move, okay, then there will be a time, I don't discount it, that the regulators can say, you have to share X, no, with your people, no? And I think it's happening, little by little, without us noticing it, no? Either by law, indirectly, not directly, no? Para, yung ano nga challenge nga gusto ko i-regulate, legislate lahat by way of regulation. But talaga hindi pwede. You live, we're in a democratic kasi system laissez-faire, so to speak, no? Sort of. Give them a chance, no? To do things on their own. What we can do is just to lay down the enabling environment that will incentivize them to do things the way things should be done. Parang ganun muna ang give the market a chance. Give the market a chance. Because we are in a free market, so to speak, di ba? Pag nilegislate mo kasi yan, kaagad, talagang baka mag-implosion, no? That has been my experience, no, in trying to, I've been involved in lawmaking for years. Ang daming pwede ilagay sa law, but at the end of the day, it's still a free market, no? As whether or not that free market is working the way it was envisioned, again, that's a very big question to answer. I think that's what we're getting into, di ba?
Yeah. And maybe not regulate it with penalties from the start. Maybe it's just
incentivizing, di ba?
It's a repertorial thing, and there are no penalties.
Yeah.
But that gets on the agenda of the board and Mancom, and eventually, since they're talking about it, things are being done and things move.
Yeah. Talk about it. Talk the value that you'll get out of it. Kasi sometimes, what's in it for me? Di ba? Naman, self-interest na naman yan Bakit may ganyan? What's in it for me? Yan ang unang tinatanong natin It's normal, it's human. Di ba? It's human. It takes a process before it gets into your mindset, into your personal culture, and hopefully to the culture of your little society and the society as a whole. Sinasabi ko back in the old days, ang natin kasi, our mindset is stuck to the past. This is the way we've been doing things. Let's continue it. Sinasabihan ako, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Diba? But you really have to really, as a leader, you really have to change that mindset to at least the environment that will incentivize people to that mindset. Again, in one board meeting, sinasabi ko sila, we blame government for what's happening, but look at ourselves in the mirror. What are we doing? Diba? Parang we are ready to condemn people, but hard on condemning ourselves. Diba? Parang kasalanan nyo na lahat Parang wala aming kasalanan. If you look at it, that's the way, well, kayo yan bakit hindi nyo ginagawa yan? Pero if we are asked to do something, to sacrifice something, then we push back. I think it's a change of mindset na kailangan natin talaga but anyway, hope is not all lost. I think my own experience at the SEC, when I arrived there are many people, young people, who are so committed, dynamic, and really willing to do things the way it should be done. For example, I've been telling this to my staff. Alam nyo, nung nasa labas ako, ang perception namin sa SEC, despite all your awards, ang bagal natin. Ang bagal natin. So ginawa ko, second week ko, sinuspend ko work from home. Second week ko lang. Dahil nakita ko yung backlog. And maraming mga bata pumunta sa akin, Sir, tama yung ginawa nyo. Kasi work from home, pag tinatawagan namin sila, because I was on the other side of the fence, Sir, wala sir dahil work from home. Bakit wala? Dapat work from home yan, di ba? You're working while at home. Parang hindi nyo pwede kontakin dahil work from home siya. Ano ba naman? Di ba? But I'm not sure. I was not surprised when I met people dynamic, committed, willing to do things, no, willing to move forward. For example, we just had because we are the chairman of the ASEAN this year, no? So there's a component there, the ASEAN Capital Markets Forum. Mga bata lahat nag-prepare sa Boracay. I just gave guidance, just supported them. Sila lahat gumawa. And all the chairman of the ASEAN SECs were very, very impressed. Pinabayaan mo lang sila. Kahapon lang sinabi ko na, I want to empower you people, but accountable. Don't go to me. Because you're a director, you're empowered to do things. Kapag pinabayaan mo yung mga bata, they do things. And they come out they overprove themselves. So I think if you take that to a larger stage, our people, I think that will happen. Tama si yung presidente, di ba? The leader has a lot to do. Ang theory ko, bigyan lang tayo ng Diyos na 2 presidente, 2 successive terms, I think things will turn around. Because I think, look at our leader, di ba? For example, not because Babe's here. When he was there, despite the prior record of the DPWH, ang linis ng tingin namin sa DPWH. I think yung leadership is very important. Leadership is very important. That's my personal take, but I think many also share that view.
Thank you, Chairman Francis. Thank you for that question. We'll need to wind up because of the lack of material time. No? We'd like to thank Chairman Francis for his valuable time and insights.
No, MAP, you don't have to thank me because MAP is my home.
Thank you. When Cliff was asking his question on regulation, I remember a certain congressman who served for 9 years who kept filing the profit-sharing bill. I think you know which congressman that was, no? That was Noynoy Aquino. Every term, he would file the 10% profit-sharing bill. Of course, it never got into law. But he was ahead of his time in terms of shared prosperity. So I think if we have 2 decent presidents in succession, that would be a terrific window of opportunity for us. So at this stage, I would like again to thank everybody who was here. I'm sure this conversation should be something we should bring to our families, to our organizations. The challenge from the chair and all the speakers is not just to build businesses, but to build institutions for nation building. I think that's really what we're talking about. And we need to harness the idealism of the youth, give them an expectation that they are part of building this country. Just a quick announcement, we still have cocktails to be served right after we adjourn. And we are distributing free books from Mr. Angeles so that you have a souvenir and a reading assignment. May exam yan, Mr. Angeles. So with that, let's love our country, let's love each other. I declare the summit closed with many thanks to our sponsors who are still here. We'll see you in the 4th summit. Mabuhay ang Pilipinas. Thank you.